Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're going to be discussing the concept of mirroring and what that means, especially in our personal and romantic lives. Even in friendships, for that matter, we may not be aware of somebody in our life is actually mirroring us. And when they're mirroring us, they're imitating us, they're copying us. And we don't realize it usually. You don't realize that it's happening. You just assume that this person has a lot of the same similarities, a lot of the same feelings and thoughts, a lot of the same likes and dislikes. And it almost seems like you're talking to yourself sometimes because there's so many things that you have in common. And this can feel really good, but we really need to get to the bottom of it to make sure that someone actually isn't mirroring you and that instead they do have these commonalities that they suggest that they have. And when somebody mirrors you, a lot of times and most often, I don't actually think that it's consciously based. Now, some people I think can consciously do it because they're trying to develop a rapport. They're trying to get you to feel a certain way. They're trying to manipulate you into seeing them in a different light. They're trying to manipulate your feelings and thoughts to believe that they are this amazing being that happens to have dropped into your life at this exact time. For the most part, though, I do feel that most people do not consciously do this, but I think that there is options for both. And so we never want to look at one thing one-sided. We want to look at it from every angle possible. Because for the most part, I believe that when someone is mirroring, they're mirroring because they're wanting to fit in, obviously, but they're wanting to fit in because they don't really have a personal identity of their own. Because think about it. If you had a really, really solid identity that you had and you were solid with it and you felt good with it and this is how it was and this is how it is, and if you felt like that, you're not going to throw that away or put that on the side just to fit in. You're just not going to do it because you don't have time for that, because it's not realistic, it's not being honest, it's not being truthful. So there's multiple levels why you wouldn't actually do something like that. And so when somebody's mirroring, I believe that they're mirroring because they're trying to fit in, they need to fit in, they want to fit in. They believe that if they act a certain way or talk a certain way that they will fit in. If they have certain likes that you have likes of or dislikes that you have dislikes of, that builds this automatic rapport. In a sense. And because there's no really fast and solid way when we look at mirroring, sometimes it can be easy for someone to adapt another person's ideas, but definitely a lot easier if that person doesn't have their own solid ideas in their own mind of what they stand for and what they don't. Mirroring is imitating or copying another person's characteristics, their traits, their behaviors. And it can be challenging to spot because many of us want to have friends. We want to have romantic relationships with people that have things in common with us. We like it. It feels good. You don't want to be in a relationship with someone that hates everything that you like. I mean, honestly, how easy is that? That's a super hard relationship to be in. There's obviously a middle ground to that, a gray area, we might say. But, let's think about that. And so oftentimes when we're meeting somebody, because many of us, especially in the last few years, it's been so nice to be able to reconnect with friends, meet new friends. That need is definitely there. And being able to see that and having that connection is very powerful. However, it can be challenging to spot because of the desire that we have for other people to be very similar or to connect with us. Having that commonality, it can feel very good. So it's something that we're probably not actually looking for. What I also consider it too is, if you really think about it really clearly, it really is borrowing a self-image of someone else. It's borrowing somebody's image and using that and portraying that as yourself. And this can be very light in nature as far as a few things, a few similarities or a few things that someone chooses to like that you like. And this can actually gradually get very extreme. So we've seen extreme versions of this as well. They're made movies of extreme versions of this as well. I think one was Single White Female. They've made a lot of different extreme versions of this, but it doesn't have to be that extreme. However, when it is, sometimes it can be even harder to spot because over a period of time, the person has, become more and more like you, and you might not actually see it. And sometimes that can be our own ego getting in the way. Our own ego getting in the way of being able to see the truth, because the truth is right in front of our face. But again, it's harder to see our issues, especially when we're in the middle of those issues. Oftentimes, too, when certain mirroring takes place and occurs, it can also, be a concept of a personality disorder. And in that situation, that person doesn't really know who they are. They're trying to adapt. They're trying to fit in. They're trying to be liked. They want everybody to like them. And so there's this absent or distorted self-image. And they constantly are trying to be somebody just to fit in. And it's heartbreaking to some degree. And I know that some people would be like, oh, that's evil, that's creepy. But no, it's actually kind of heartbreaking in the fact that somebody doesn't have a self-image enough to be able to step up and be that person, but also that insecurity and that fear that they will not be liked, they will not be respected, they will not be chosen, that sort of thing. And it's interesting because this type of behavior can manifest itself in, the imitation and, the copying of another person's way of mannerisms, how somebody talks, the way that they use their hands, the way that they cross their legs. It can also be used in the way somebody speaks, the way that someone speaks, how they inflect maybe some jokes, the laughter, even some of the sayings that this person uses. So some of the sayings or thoughts of what somebody is saying or doing can also be interesting. Favorite thoughts or favorite concepts of a person can be that way as well. So all these things are very important to analyze. All these things, we have to look at and really get a grip on to really understand what are we dealing with and, how deep is the mirroring. It can also be in behavior, right? Somebody can copy, mirror our behavior. Even our dress, the way that you dress can be copied. The style of clothes that you wear can be copied. The habits you have, the habit purchases, the way that you purchase things, what you purchase, the things that you buy can also be mirrored and copied. I was talking to someone the other day, and they just realized that this person in their life has been copying their clothing style for the last 3 years to the extreme of they will go and pick up clothes and buy clothes, and then they'll see this person, and the person will ask them all these questions about where they got it and all that stuff. And then within a week, that person's wearing the exact identical outfit and talking about it. And I understand that people like certain things that other people have, but quite honestly, I would never want to be dressed the same. I would never want to wear something that someone else is wearing. I do not want to do that. That is something that I would not want to do. Not that it's like that big of a deal, but honestly, it's their own style. I'm not interested in copying that. But I mean, I've heard of, extreme stories where women have actually copied another woman's jewelry. Every piece of jewelry they have, had it made, created just to match exactly. And to me, that's interesting because I haven't seen anybody's style that I would want to replicate. Sorry, just haven't. I mean, not that people don't have great style, but I'm not really interested in their style. I have my own style, and it's what I gravitate to, and it's what I like, and it kind of augments and changes over time based on how I'm feeling and that sort of thing. But I don't want to mimic another person's style. I just don't see the need or want or desire. But some people do, and it gets overwhelming because it gets excessive because they need that to continue because they're kind of building off the image of that other person. And that can be challenging to see, especially if you're in a romantic relationship or dating someone right now that might be mirroring you because they could be saying all the things that you agree with. They could be saying all the right things. They could like all the right music. They could like all the same music. They could love doing all the things that you like to do. They could hate, the things that you hate, and y'all can talk about all that stuff as well. So it's and I think hate is a very harsh word. Dislike, the things that you dislike, that sort of thing. But again, remember, it actually creates this reality where if that's not really true and the person really doesn't feel that way, it's a fake connection. It's not a real connection. You see what I'm saying? It's not real. It's not real. And if it's not real, what do we have? Because if the person really doesn't want that, or if the person really doesn't feel that way, what do we really have? What are we really doing? And that's the question. And that's why this show, I think, is so important for anybody out there listening to this. Please share it with family, friends, relatives, anybody that you think is going through this, even yourself. Let's analyze this stuff and let's begin to get to the bottom of it. Let's get to the core of this so we can better understand ourselves and better understand the relationships that we're in. Because this is so important to know. As long as we kind of have an idea of what we're dealing with, we have a better chance of getting through it positively. We have a better chance of understanding ourselves. We have a better chance of all those things. However, if we don't really see things clearly, or we're not looking at things clearly, we might not really be able to understand what's really happening in our life. And that's what I wanted. That's what this whole show is about. That's what the whole concept of Live Your True Life Perspectives and Live Your True Life is about, is really being able to understand who you are, being able to understand what you stand for, being able to understand that. And that's what a lot of clients come to me for, is when they're in the middle of a toxic relationship, they're questioning their own identity, they're worried, they're questioning that identity, and because they've been in this relationship so long, that has created turmoil and it's created personal questioning in their own mind. And that's where it's such a big deal. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we have to really look at things and say, okay, what is going on here? And when you're in a relationship that has created this question and concern in your life, you begin to question your identity. You begin to question who you are or what you stand for. You begin to question those things, and as we question those things, we end up losing sight of our identity. And so one of the things that I really help clients with is to really figure out what that identity looks like, because we have to kind of resurrect it from the very beginning. We have to start from scratch, and there'll be some pieces that we can use, but we really have to start from scratch, because anytime someone is in one of those types of relationships, now, it's not all one-sided. Now, it's not just one person is contributing to the toxicity in a relationship. However, it's the perfect storm, right? And I've talked about the perfect storm before, is that we have to look at the perfect storm and understand it and really analyze it to understand why we're in the relationship. Why do we choose that relationship in the first place? What is it providing for us? And then what is it taking away from us? And, there's a lot of folks out there, and you might be one of them, who's in a relationship where you're being treated poorly, you're being yelled at, you're being screamed at, you're taken for granted. Maybe they're using names, calling you names, pushing your buttons, doing these types of things, and that's super challenging. It's super challenging, and it's super painful. And I totally understand that. I totally understand if you're there. And if you're there, that is a really challenging place to be, because you may know that you are not selfish. You may know that you're not a liar. You may know that you're not a cheater. But the longer somebody keeps telling you that, the more it keeps registering in your brain, the more you're hearing these negative concepts, the more that you're hearing these negative labels that you're having to toss aside and re-believe in who you are. And over time, it makes you question, especially the concept of being selfish. I always think that's an interesting one, that selfish one. That's used quite a bit across the board. And when people are constantly saying that someone else is selfish, and the other person knows that they're not, but again, a lot of times we don't realize that we might be being projected upon. And that projection is a really challenging thing to see sometimes, because we're not really necessarily prepared for it. And so later on in the show, I'm going to be talking more about mirroring, more about things to really recognize and see. And this doesn't just apply to romantic relationships. This applies to all relationships and friendships and work environment and that sort of thing, because this is going to really help you to understand truly what these relationships are about and be able to understand if there needs to be some boundaries that haven't been created and some other things as well. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Kroger Delivery has one mission: to deliver the freshest food right to your door. That's why our drivers are pros. Our trucks are refrigerated. And when it comes to low prices, we always deliver. With $20 off your first order of $75 or more, there's no better time to get in on the action. Mission accomplished. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're examining the concept of mirroring. Some people call it the chameleon effect. We know what chameleons do, right? So it's about somebody mirroring you, and a lot of times, more often than not, we don't know that they're mirroring us. We're not over there going, oh, I'm being mirrored. No, usually we just have blinders on. We don't realize it's happening because it feels good when somebody likes the same stuff or does the same things or doesn't like the same things you don't like and, totally is behind you 100% and doesn't argue and finds all this. Yeah, it's great. It feels great. And so we confuse that a lot of times with, oh, we have all this in common, when in reality, we might not actually have that much in common. And remember that the building, that commonality and building that connection is a way to get closer to you. And so, when you think about it, mirroring is described in multiple things. So let's look at mirroring just outside of psychology, outside of this concept. Let's look at mirroring in the business sense. There's lots of different videos and content and books out there, and it's very interesting about how when people are in business, how they mirror, they imitate the verbal or nonverbal behaviors of others. In business settings, this is often done to build rapport and goodwill. It's very interesting, but isn't that manipulation to some degree? Is it? Think about it. How close is that to manipulation? If you're doing the same thing as someone else, if you're copying the way that they're sitting, is that really honesty? It's interesting how, the body language, all that is very interesting. And, the context of this, because, to some degree, when you look at mirroring, you see that, in certain aspects, supposedly it's not negative. Supposedly it's not bad. There's articles in the Wall Street Journal that talk about using mirroring to connect with others. Adopting the same gestures and postures and tone can enhance bonding and help with networking or negotiating. But be subtle about it. I mean, I get that we want to connect, but do we want to connect at all at this kind of extreme? And I think it's kind of creepy, maybe. Some people, to some degree, but it says that mirroring can help you to create powerful connections with others. This behavior is called the chameleon effect, which causes others to like and trust you more. But think about that. I get that we want to connect and have rapport, but do we have to have rapport at all costs? To me, this is kind of sketchy because this is happening now personally, professionally, all across the world. There's somebody that in your life that is mirroring you. And you have thought that this person and you are identical, when in reality, you're not. And that's what I want us to think about. That's where I want us to go from A to B. That's what I want us to think about, because I want us to think about that in a way that we really kind of connect those dots. I want us to think about that in a way that we connect those dots. I want us to understand that in a way where we start understanding exactly where we stand. And I'm just bringing this up because I think this is very important, because there's a lot of mixed signals about mirroring. And I even think that when you're talking about it in a business setting, I still don't think it's right. It's okay to appreciate someone else's style and that sort of thing, but to mimic it, I don't know. I feel like it's a way of creating rapport that's not necessarily real. I can understand if somebody is very intense at the moment and you get to their intensity. I can understand if somebody's, being calm or joking and you begin to joke as well, just to continue to create the same atmosphere, the same feelings, the same emotions, but understanding that you're coming from the position of who you are and what's going on with you, that's honest and direct. And that's where I want us to be at. I want us to also realize if we're ever mirroring, and why do we mirror? So we can talk more about that here in just a bit, as if we are mirroring, why? Why have we caught ourselves doing it? Why are we doing it? What's the reason? And let's really dig deep into that. And that'll also help us to understand reasons of why other people do mirror if it's not you, and be able to understand that plight. So we have a lot to talk about. Don't change the channel. Live Your True Life Perspectives. with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm explaining the concept of mirroring, the chameleon effect, and what that really is. And right before the break, I was talking about how you can go online and find a lot of stuff on mirroring. And some of it is like supposedly positive, out of the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. If you want to do this, you can connect. If you do this, you can connect more in business. You can do that. You can do this. And I just don't know if any of this is really truly where we need to be at. I really think that mirroring needs to be really watched and really made aware. And I think we all need to be aware of the tendency of us to mirror another person. And right now, I really want to talk about, if you find yourself mirroring, have you found yourself mirroring someone else? Have you found yourself agreeing to things that you don't want to agree to? Have you found yourself, getting into fit in, where you fit in and trying to get in there and try to do what you need to do to form that connection? Do you feel like sometimes you do things because you feel like you have to, not because you want to? And these are interesting because as I work with clients day after day, it's interesting how we find out usually that they have been, or their spouse has been, or their romantic partner has been, or their good friend has been mirroring them, or they've been mirroring them, and they didn't realize it. Because it happens so quickly, and a lot of times it's on autopilot, right? We want so badly somebody to care about us, to connect with us, to even if it's if it's a friend, to be our good friend, to be there for us, and we don't think about, maybe some of the things that we had to do to make that a reality. And those are the things that we really need to analyze and we need to see for what it is so we really get a good baseline as to what's happening and what we're doing. And this is very important aspects of our life. And these are things that we really need to focus on. So why would we mirror? What would be the purpose of mirroring? Let's ask the question. What would be the purpose of mirroring? And I want you to think about that. Why would we mirror? And I think that a lot of people mirror to fit in. I think that a lot of people mirror because it's easier that way. You're not rocking the boat. You're finding commonality. You're agreeing to things. The other person obviously, likes you. Because you're agreeing with them. There's not any negativity. There's no turmoil. That kind of thing. And I think that that's where the rubber meets the road. And I feel like that's an important concept here. Because that's where, a lot of times we try to get in to fit in and that sort of thing. And so if you're mirroring someone right now, why is that? Why are you mirroring someone? Why do you feel like you need to mirror that person? And that's a really good question because what is the need? What's the reason for needing to do that? And if you feel like you are not able to, continue that relationship without that, or you feel as though the person's not going to be there for you or understand your plight, then that's something that we really need to discuss. Because right now, if you're mirroring somebody and that's not really how you feel, we're not being authentically honest about ourselves. We're not being authentically honest about what we stand for. We're not being authentically honest about who we are. And I think that's important. And I think that's something that we have to honestly look at. And many of us might be doing it with a boss. We might be mirroring a boss. We might be mirroring a good friend. We might be mirroring a childhood friend. And we have to really separate that and ask ourselves, do we really feel this way? Because sometimes you may have been mirroring for so long, you don't really know what you like. You're not aware of really what you like or who you are. And this can be super painful. This can be super painful because this can be a problem. And this is something that we definitely need to look at and understand so that we can better understand ourselves. And this is powerful, and this is what we need to be aware of for ourselves, and this is what we need to be aware of to move forward in our life. And that's where we need to be at, which is so practical and powerful and very interesting when you think about it, because even, many of us don't even realize it, that we've been going through this. Many of us don't realize, that we have had to deal with this. And this is something that we need to be aware of. This is something that we need to understand to really get to that next level. So if you are mirroring somebody, really looking at that and understanding that and seeing that for what that truly is. Also it's interesting when I look at mirroring, I found that some people mirror other people's clothing, their style. Other people mirror their cars. They might buy the same identical car. They may mirror your likes and dislikes, the music you like, the types of people you like, the types of clothing. They might even mirror your belief systems. And this is a deep one. I think you can figure out the other ones pretty easily. But this is a very deep one that is challenging because what happens is that when somebody mirrors our belief system, we begin to believe that they feel the exact way as we do. Now that can be very manipulative. Because I know that some of you out there have been looking for someone for a long time that agrees with you or believes in some of the concepts that you believe in. And once you find that person, it's such an amazing feeling. You feel as though, oh my gosh, I found my soulmate. This is really the one. This is the person. This is it. This is the end all be all. I finally figured it out. And it can be really off-putting because it might not be true. It might not actually be the truth, and it's probably not, especially if somebody's mirroring you. I recently been working with someone in the very beginning of their relationship. The spouse actually, convinced them that they were big believers in God just as they were, that they carried their Bible everywhere, that they did this and that was it. And so they immediately believed that they were at the same level in their thought process, religion-based wise, as they were. And so that immediately allowed them to, I think, take down any sort of walls. And also, unfortunately, when that happens, when mirroring happens, well, a lot of times what we do is we forego boundaries. And see, this is one of the things that I want you to think about is we don't really have to always worry about is somebody mirroring or not, but we need to create proper boundaries in our relationship to really understand where we're at. And we can't just lose our boundaries based on this person has all these things in common, okay? So if I believe in Christianity or I believe in Buddhism or I believe in Islam, it doesn't matter what. And somebody comes into my life and they believe in exactly the same thing and they believe in it and they tell me they believe in it. You still got to take time over and really analyze and see somebody over a period of time if that is honestly true or not. Is that really necessarily where they stand? And that's what I really want to ask you. Is that necessarily where they stand? And these are things that we need to really, really focus on. These are things that we need to understand. These are things that we need to focus on. These are things that we have to get a grip on. And this is what we need to really analyze. And that's where I want us to be at. That's where I want us to be at, is to really see that. Because it's what happens here is that if we fall for the mirroring and we believe the mirroring to be true, what happens is we usually lack boundaries. We lack limit. We don't put any boundaries up. We allow people to continue to do what they're doing. And then over time, we have no boundaries at all. And so basically, we're in this relationship, but we don't have boundaries. We don't have limitations. We're not thinking about anything else because this person seems to be the perfect mate possible. But what happens when we find that's not true? Also, it's really hard when we don't have boundaries to really see this, remember? Because if we don't have boundaries and everything's just kind of willy-nilly and we're just kind of going, we're just kind of seeing this, we have to get to that point where we can understand that, okay, if we can create some boundaries and have some boundaries in the relationship, that's going to be very helpful for us to understand who we are and where we are and what we're doing in our life. And that is what's so super important for us, right? Is to understand exactly what that's about and be able to see that for what it is from the very get-go. And so the boundaries that we need to talk about here, whether somebody's mirroring you or not, whether you know it or not, is to be able to start and look at, what do you really believe in? This is going to help you to stop mirroring if you're mirroring as well. Because we really have to know what you stand for. Because if you don't know what you stand for, you're going to constantly find yourself mirroring with other people. And it's just not going to be honest for you. It's not going to be true. It's not going to be honest for you. You're going to be questioning yourself and you're going to fall trap. You're going to fall trap into falling for other people, and what they're saying. That's the key. You don't want to fall trap into something. You don't want to fall trap into what's happening. You don't want to fall trap in the situation of what's going on. And that is very important. So we want to really be honest and truthful in what we're doing. We want to be honest and truthful in everything we do. And this is very powerful. But in order to do that, we have to really understand who we are and what we stand for. So what are our values? What are our values? What does that mean? So, like, for example, do I believe in this? Do I believe in that? What are my values? And we can kind of go from there. So, if we can understand that, and we can understand where we are, we can understand what we agree to and what we don't agree to. And that can help you, because it's hard sometimes when we're forging through life. Sometimes it can be easier, we feel, to just agree with somebody and just agree with them so that we can accept that reality. Just agree with them to accept that reality. And that's what we need to really look at. That's what we need to understand. Because we have to be true to ourselves. Because what happens here is, like, let's just say that you are mirroring someone in your life. It gets tiring after a while, because over time you're not going to want to continue that way. You might have your own thoughts. You may feel like you are neglecting yourself. You may begin to question your reality. Is this what I stand for? Is it not what I stand for? All of these things are very important to understand. All of these things are very important to understand where we are and what we're doing. And that's where I want us to be. That's where I want us to understand. That's where I want us to connect. That's where I want us to be. That's where I want us to be, as far as, okay, this is my feelings. I might not completely know exactly where I stand on everything, but I'm going to get to an idea. I'm going to have a good idea, and I can change an idea at any time. But I'm going to be okay with saying some things that might be disagreeable with somebody else. And I'm not doing it just to create a problem or to rock the boat, just doing it because that's just honestly how I feel. And it's like, once you get to that point of being honest with how you feel, that's when we can get to that next level of saying, okay, I realize now that I had been mirroring quite a bit. I realize now that I have been mirroring this situation, and I've created this reality, and I get that. So how do I move forward with that? How do I change that? How do I augment that? How do I reconcile with that? Because if you're mirroring somebody, don't beat yourself up. Let's just look at it. I mean, this is what we need to look at, because you have been told somehow or not, through your core beliefs, based on your core wounds, that you can't be you, or that you have to be like everybody else to fit in. And that's what we need to understand. That's what we need to honestly look at. Where did this come from? Where did this start? Where did this thought concept start from? What do we need to do from there? And that is powerful. And that's where we derive power in our life and understand exactly who we are. And over time, we will figure out the ins and outs. Over time, we will figure out who we really are. Over time, we will realize what we stand for. Over time. And I feel like that's where we need to be at. That's what we need to understand. That's where we need to be. And if we can get there, we're going to be that much better. If we can get there, we're going to be that much more firm in who we are. And that is going to be powerful. So let's look at that. Where do we stand? What do we stand for? When it comes to our belief system, do you have an idea what your belief system is? What does it mean? You can always change this. It's always fluid. That's the thing, is that it's not like a doctrine. We're not like, putting out, stone tablets and saying that this is it. It's never going to change. I'm never going to augment this. It's never going to be augmented. I'm always going to feel this way. No, I'm just saying, where are you at right now? Where are you at right now? Where do you want to be at? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts right now? What are your beliefs right now? What are the things that really really stick? What are the things that you really want to live by? What are those things? And really get to analyze this, because this is some powerful information. This is some powerful stuff that we can really get down to the root of things to really understand better what is going on in our life, what is really happening, and how do we get there? And that's where the power starts. That's where we begin to get power in our life. So I want you to start writing that down. Get out a journal, start a journal, buy a journal, get a notebook. Don't just write on random pieces of paper, because that's not going to help us, because those random pieces of paper are going to be thrown away. They're going to get lost. They're not going to be in order. We're not going to know where they are, all those things. So let's get some organization into our life and start analyzing, how do we feel? Write it down. What do I think about this? What do I think about that? What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? Why do I feel that way? Why do I feel this way? And why do I have this belief? Why is this belief so important to me? And where did it come from? Where did this belief come from? Where did it originate from? That's what's so smart about it, right? Where did it originate from? What does it mean? And why am I doing this? Why do I feel this way? Why is this so important to me? All these things are very important questions that we can ask ourselves as we begin to learn who we are. And what we're doing here is we're realizing we don't have to borrow a self-image. We don't have to mirror anymore. And we can realize when we are mirroring and be able to understand exactly what's going on in our life so that we can be super prepared and understand when we've done this. Because what happens with mirroring is we've probably been doing it for a very long time and we are super unaware of it. We're unaware that we're doing it. We just are. So we got to be super aware that we're doing it. And in order to be aware of it, we got to think, is this really what I stand for? Is this really how I feel? Do I really like this music? Is this song really my favorite song? All these questions need to be asked, no matter how simple or how deep. When I return, I'll be explaining more of this and how to ask those questions and how to get to the bottom of things and get some clarity. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been examining mirroring, the chameleon effect, understanding if we are mirroring or if somebody else is mirroring us, and how to really get down to the bottom of that, really understand what that means. When we mirror somebody, it could be something that we subconsciously didn't even realize it, unconscious to the fact that we're doing it, just to be able to fit in, just to be able to get that other person to like us. And that could be a way of life that we've had for a very long time. And understanding that that's the case can really help us to understand if we're mirroring and can help us to understand who we truly are, to let go of the BS and begin to identify who we are so that we can enter into relationships that actually work, but also we can enter into a relationship with ourselves. And that's what's so important. That's where we need to be at. And so, if we recap the show and really think about this, we need to figure out our values. We need to figure out what we stand for, what we believe in, and what we don't. And if we can get a good baseline on that, we can really get an idea of where we are. We can also be aware of, am I mirroring? Am I not? What's really happening? And this can be very valuable. And this can be very, very profound when it comes to that stuff. And I think that is where we need to be at. And that is so valuable and so profound. Once we understand those values, we get to that level. Once we understand those values, we really understand who we are and we understand what we stand for. And so this is helpful. Anybody out there that is dealing with someone mirroring them, anybody out there who is mirroring someone else. So understanding our values. What do we stand for? What are the things that we agree with? Looking at our belief system. What do we believe in? What do we not? If you believe that you're being mirrored by somebody, step back and start analyzing. If they agree with you, do they actually have a real reason why they agree, or are they just agreeing? And are you just now realizing that that's what's been happening this whole time? Because that's information too. Because if we're just being agreed with this entire time, and that's what's really happening, we need to get a grip on that and understand what is truly happening, because that can also be very painful later on down the road, because we may be believing a situation and believing a relationship is where it is when it's not. And to me, it's like we really all need to look at our mirroring across the board with everything we do to make sure that we're all being honest with ourselves. How much mirroring are we doing? And if we are mirroring, what do we need to learn from that? How do we need to learn from that? What can we do to go from there? And that is what I'm thinking, and that is where we need to go from there, to understand that and to get a better aspect of where we are in our life. So being able to step back, looking around, is someone mirroring you? Understanding that, seeing the perspective that they are mirroring you. Is it from a perspective of manipulation, or is it the fact that they just want to get in to fit in? Are they aware of it? Are they not aware of it? On the other flip side, is that you? Are you mirroring somebody else? Are you aware of it? Are you not aware of it? Looking at it, seeing it. Is there things that you don't really like that you're agreeing and going along with? These are things that you need to think about as well. All these aspects are very powerful aspects, and all it does is help us learn more about ourselves and learn more about the others who are around us. And the more relationships we have, the more we learn about ourselves, and that becomes very valuable, because the most important relationship we will have is with ourselves, to understand who we are, what we stand for in this lifetime, and get a better idea of the human condition. If you haven't already, go check out YouTube. Go to YouTube. We put up new video content every single week. Video content, we put up podcasts. If you're listening to this, you're either listening to it on the radio or you're listening to it in the podcast format. Either way, I'm glad to have you here. If you go to YouTube, just put my name in, Ashley Burgess, Berges, Ashley Berges, and check it out. Check out the new content. We also have a new members website that's exclusive to our website, Ashley Burgess, AshleyBerges.com. And yes, you can click on that, and on the front page on the website, you'll see a banner there. You can click on that banner and learn about membership opportunities. We have all kinds of things going on, opportunities. We have events, and we have exclusive content that isn't anywhere else. So definitely check into that when you get a chance. There's all types of different memberships, and it's really neat because you can communicate, and it's a safe environment where people can communicate their ideas and their thoughts and be able to be heard and communicate and comment without having to have ridicule and that sort of thing, as well as finding a community of people that actually resonate with what you resonate. So definitely check it out when you get a chance. And in the meantime, thank you so much for listening, and definitely, being a part of the message and being a part of the solution and sharing with others. The more you can share, please share the show. Please help get the word out. We're doing as best as we can. We don't do any advertising, so it's really word of mouth on everything. And for everybody with word of mouth, thank you so much, because this is what we need. Let other people know so they can get help as well, and we can keep pushing out the positive, healthy message for others to hear. Again, thanks for tuning in. Whether you're working out, driving to work, putting the kids to bed, just sitting at your desk with your ear pods on, glad to have you. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time, you know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.